Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of your physics summer assignment. Um, so if you go to do Google Classroom, you'll see that there are these episodes that are posted right now. I haven't submitted it yet. But when you click on the PDF that's there, you'll see it will ask you, it will open like this, and then you're going to open it in Kami, and you're going to edit it as I edit it. You may need to log into your Google account. After you fill out the notes, you're going to take a small quiz on this program called Quizzes, which I'm going to be using. And that is the link that will be on Google Classroom. If you have any questions, please either comment on Google Classroom or send me an email. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is measuring. And again, some of you may know this already, but you may not know it in the metric system. You might know it in how we measure in real life. So the first thing that we're going to have to measure in physics, and we're actually going to be doing in our first lab, is the length of something or the distance something travels. So if you have, if you're measuring a small distance, okay, and you're going to be measuring it either in centimeters, that's the metric unit, and we'll talk about the units that you're used to. And the device that you would use is a ruler. And if you take a look here, you'll see, you've all probably seen a ruler. These are the relative distances of the things that are used to measure. And I just ordered some measuring tape, so hope we get them soon. So I would say a small object would be like a pencil, something that is the size of a ruler. For larger objects, okay, so maybe the things that are like the size of a desk or, medium is relative, you would use a meter stick. Long area, haha. And again, we're going to have practice measuring these things in class. So now sort of just to get the units down. And the metric unit for distance of that length is meters. And we're going to learn how to convert between these. You might have learned that already, that all based on a power of 10. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry. That's going to be one of the first things that we learn. Now, if you have a pretty large distance, so maybe it's like the shape of the distance of a room or the length of a room, you tend to use a tape measure. Which I just bought some. And I always keep, and also tape measures also measure in meters. All right, and then very, very, very large objects. So I'm saying like the distance from here to like New York City, or the distance from like, I don't know, in like the home plate to the fence. We still use meters or kilometers. Kilometers is the larger one. You can use meters or kilometers. And actually now, oftentimes satellites are used. We're not going to obviously have those to measure the distance, and I can't spell satellites, evidently. What else is new? To measure distance. So in baseball, if a player hits a home run, they use satellites to measure the distance that the ball travels, and they can get the distance immediately. And here we can see the types of devices we're going to practice. When you're using a ruler or a meter stick, you have to make sure that you are lined up with the 0 mark. But you can sort of see this is a yard stick, which is a little bit shorter than a meter stick, and we'll talk about the differences in a second. So when you've been measuring distance in your life, or the length of something in your life, the units that you're used to using is like inches. So in the equivalent to inches in science, and we're going to do the conversion between these to sort of see the difference, is centimeters. All right, and then you might have also seen feet or yards. It's another unit, and again, we have to learn to convert between these, which we will. Just probably, if you're measuring in feet or yards, you'd probably measure in the science unit, which obviously is called metric units. You would probably be measuring it in meters. And again, if this is not familiar to it, don't worry, we're going to practice converting between these. And then last but not least, this is probably the one you know the most. In America, when you drive your car, you measure your distance in miles. In other countries that use the metric system, they actually measure the distance in kilometers. And this is the the conversion between miles and kilometers that we're going to do the most. All right, our next thing, which we're going to be using in our first lab, is mass. Okay, and the device uses a scale, and we have some nice digital scales that you're going to use. One of the first things we're going to learn is the difference between mass and weight. So every object has the same mass. The weight of an object is dependent on the force of gravity, which is the same on Earth. But if you went to the moon, it would be different. But mass is, you could say how heavy the object is, but that's technically wrong. It really measures how much matter is in the object. But we will again talk about the difference between mass and weight in a second. So how much matter is in the object. All right. So in your regular life, there are so many sort of like metric units that are non-metric units, that are used to measure mass. So the one that you're most common with is pounds. You might also see ounces, which I can never spell correctly, such is my life. What else do they measure in the metric system? Pounds, ounces. I feel like those are the two ones that are always used for measurement. You're going to see that in the metric system, the only two that we're really going to use are grams, which is for like small things, like a pencil or I don't know, a bug, and then or kilograms, which is what you would measure a person in. So actually, let me put these the other way, because if you would measure a person in pounds, in the metric system, you would measure it in kilograms. And again, we will discuss how to convert between kilograms and grams if you haven't learned that already. A kilogram, 1 kilogram is much bigger, or 1,000 times bigger than a gram. All right, and the last thing that we're going to be measuring, and this is we're going to get to more later in September, is speed. Okay, and you could, if you wanted to give a definition of speed, so a speed would be how fast an object is traveling. And when you measure a speed, you need two things. You need the distance, and usually you're going to see that the distance that's given in our problems is in meters. But I'm not going to use that yet until we sort of learned how to convert between metric units. And you need a time, and the time is usually given in seconds. So again, but you could also be asked in minutes. So just so that if you have 1 hour, that's equal to 60 minutes. And then you could also be asked to measure in seconds. And then if you have 60 seconds, that's equal to 1 minute. So again, we will talk about converting between these. We're going to have a whole day of sort of conversion, probably either the first or second week. But let's just do this problem so that we can calculate a speed. So a car travels 120 miles in 2 hours. And again, then this should be car. Obviously, I can't type. What is the car's average speed? Now, just to note that this word average here is very important, because average speed is like the general speed they were traveling the entire time. When you drive a car, you don't drive the same speed the whole time. You go faster when you're on the highway and slower when you're on the side streets. If you took physics, you learned about something called instantaneous speed, and that is the derivative, which we're not going to learn in calculus, but there's a difference between average speed is your speed over time, where instantaneous speed is your speed at a given point. So that would be when you're looking at your speedometer, and at a certain point while you're driving, that's your speed. Maybe you're driving 72 miles per hour, but you're not at that particular time. But that is not your speed for the entire trip. So that being said, if we're going to do this, and I'm going to get my pen out to do a little bit of the work. So you remember, and to abbreviate this, D is used for distance, lowercase d, T is used for time. And then we're going to use S for speed. You'll see that we won't deal with speed that much. We're going to use our separate term, which is known as velocity. But we'll obviously get to that when school starts. And to do this, so we need to get the speed, we need to divide the distance divided by the time. So the distance is 120 miles. And we're going to get our calculator out and divide it by 2. And then our answer would be 60. And you always need to have units on physics numbers. So again, the speed of the distance is in miles. So that's the first unit, miles. And I'm writing with a mouse, so it's obviously hard. And then the bottom unit is hours. All right. So this was just a sort of, and obviously to measure time, you use a stopwatch or a clock. So this was just a basic introduction to the 3 types of units we're going to be using the most: distance, mass, and speed, which includes time. One of the first things that we're going to learn when we get into school is how to convert between these units, so how to convert between different units. So now if you look underneath or in the instructions, underneath the link for this video is a quizzes to take. And again, don't worry. I mean, try to do your best, but you will, it's going to tell you the right answer. So, you can redo it. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to do that. We'll figure it out. All right. I will see you guys soon, and look for episode 2 coming up.